Hi class, and welcome to this video on VCE Year 12 Economics, which is going to combine our understanding of supply and demand and start to think about this concept of an equilibrium price. So this is our 7th key knowledge point in Unit 3 Outcome 1. And I hope by the end of this video, which will be a shorter video than the previous ones on supply and demand, that you understand the effect of changes in supply and demand on this concept of an equilibrium price and quantity traded. So it's going to be all about understanding what happens when supply and demand create an equilibrium price and quantity. Now you can see that this is our 7th key knowledge point in Unit 3 Outcome 1, and there is a video on each of these to helpfully build up your understanding of Outcome 1. Now, what do I mean by equilibrium or market equilibrium? This allows us to consider the demand curve, which is here, and you can see that it is declining, and then our supply curve here, which is an incline. And so far in the videos, we've considered demand and supply curves to be in isolation. We've learnt about them. We've learnt about movements along, shifts of, and the factors that impact them, but we've never actually combined them together. But in reality, suppliers and consumers work within a market, hopefully a perfectly competitive market. And there isn't multiple prices, but one price for goods. So how do we come to that price using our demand and supply curve? This is the concept of market equilibrium. In order to determine the price and quantity actually sold in any market, we need to understand how supply and demand interact. And you can start to see a clue on this little image here that there really is only one price and one quantity, and you can see it's where that supply and demand curve interact or cross. This is because in reality, each market will arrive for a product at a single price in a point of time. We call this market equilibrium, and we could also call this price equilibrium. This is the single price that occurs in the market for the product. Now, as I've mentioned, this equilibrium quantity and price is determined by the interaction of suppliers, sellers, and buyers because of the supply and demand curves. Now, equilibrium occurs when the price is at a point where quantity demanded is equal to the quantity supplied. So you can see at this little point here, the quantity demanded of 500 equals the quantity supplied of 500. And this results in a price you can see is 60. That is the concept. Why are we striving for this? At the equilibrium price and quantity, an efficient outcome has occurred. It's been occurred and it is efficient because all that has been supplied has been bought, and everyone who demanded a product got one. This means if everyone who wanted one got one, and everything that was supplied was sold, we have no shortage, and this would occur if the quantity demanded is larger than the quantity supplied, and no surplus, which occurs where quantity demanded is smaller than quantity supplied. So the concept of market equilibrium, if we come back to the product of green smoothies, is trying to find out at the price where quantity demanded, so quantity demanded equals quantity supplied. And this is where the supply curve and the demand curve intersect. The market is in equilibrium when 90 smoothies are sold, because you see they cross at 90, And at that point, they will be sold at $4. Or probably a better way to do it, because price is the independent variable and quantity is the dependent variable, at the price of $4, quantity demanded and quantity supplied are equal, so we sell them at 90. And you can see at $4 here, this is the only point where we don't have a surplus or shortage. If I sell them for $2, the quantity demanded is going to be 130, quantity supplied will be 70, so there will be more people wanting smoothies than is supplied, so there will be a shortage of 60. At $6, 50 will be demanded because they're more expensive, so less people will want them. There are substitutes. Income effect is it's costing relatively too much to buy them. But suppliers will make more profit if they sell them, so they supply more, they sell 110. So we're going to have 60 more supplied than demanded, so we're going to have a surplus. And that's inefficient because they will go off, they will be wasted, they'll have to be chucked in the bin. So the movement to equilibrium is there will always have a tendency, the market will always have a tendency towards equilibrium. When the price is above or below equilibrium, there will be a market move, a market shift to drive the price back. So for example, if we can see at the price of $6, as we said, we were going to have a surplus of 60 because quantity supplied by the supplier would be 110 and the quantity demanded by purchasers would be 50. So there's a surplus of 60. Now when the price is above equilibrium, this occurs as there will be a surplus, and suppliers don't want to throw out smoothies. They will recognize the price is too high, so they will lower their price to sell them. So we will have a market mechanism, a force where they recognize that the price is too high and it will go down to $4 per smoothie. When the price is too low, for example at $2, suppliers will only supply 70 because they're not going to get much profit from them. Purchasers will demand lots because they're cheap, they'll get lots of utility out of them, so there will be a shortage of 60. And suppliers will recognize because there is a shortage, people are willing to buy more, pay more for them, so they will recognize the price is too low, so it will go up to $4 per smoothie. So there is always a movement to finding that equilibrium price, in this case setting the price at $4 and selling 90 and supplying 90. Now what happens when we recognize that demand and supply curves shift, so they move? How does that impact the equilibrium price? So the first one we're going to think about is demand. What happens to when there is a change in demand, but supply remains constant? When the market is in equilibrium, there is no pressure for price to change unless there is a shift, so a new demand or supply curve. So what happens if there is a new demand curve? An increase in demand results in the demand curve shifting to the right. So for example, if the demand curve goes like this, what happens if it shifts to the right? If the supply remains the same, this will create a shortage of supply at the initial price and new quantity demanded. Because at each price, there is now more demand. So if the price remains the same and supply remains the same, there will be more demanded and we won't be in equilibrium. In this case, because there is a shortage now, the price will increase, creating a new equilibrium price. Now, if supply increased along demand, this would create a new equilibrium quantity traded. So let's have a look at this. In this case, there is an increase in demand while supply remains constant. So our demand has gone from D1 to D2. Now, for whatever reason that is. Now, if we stayed at the same price, so the original price was P1, we would have a shortage because there would be this amount of shortage of excess demand. There is more demanded than supplied. So how do we now do this? We now move up to a new equilibrium price. The price has gone up. So in this case, the price will go up and the quantity will go up because of the shift in demand. More has been demanded, and as a result, suppliers will increase their price to create a price point where we're in equilibrium and there is no shortage or surplus. Now, what happens if there is a decrease in demand? That would mean that we would have a surplus at the original price. So we've gone from D1 to D2. And this has resulted in, if we keep at the same price, P1, we will have a surplus. Because at that price, suppliers will keep making a certain amount, and because of less demand, they will buy less of it. We have a surplus. Suppliers will recognize that we must have a movement along the supply curve to our new equilibrium price, and this will result in our price going down and the quantity going down that is traded. And understanding these concepts and really understanding these graphs will help you understand these concepts. Now, changes in supply while demand remain concepts also influence equilibrium price. An increase in supply, for example, decreased costs of production, new technology, shifts the supply curve to the right. The supply curve going to the right. If demand remains the same, there are going to be the same amount demanded, but more in the market supplied, so we will have a surplus at the initial price, the original equilibrium price. Now, the price will decrease until this surplus is eliminated. Suppliers don't like having surplus, having waste, so to get rid of that, they will reduce their price. Now, if demand increased along with supply, this would create a new equilibrium quantity traded, but we're just thinking about supply changing and demand remaining constant. So in this case, if there is an increase in supply, we will have a shift to the right as we have gone from S to S2. Now, if demand does not change, we are going to have this amount of surplus because there is a difference. We are not in equilibrium at price point 1, and there is a surplus of a certain amount. As a result, because of this surplus, there will be a reduction in the price. Suppliers will reduce their price, and this will result in a movement along the demand curve to resulting in our price going down and our quantity traded increasing, because as price goes down, quantity going up, traded will go up. A decrease in supply will result in a shift to the left, going from S to S2. And this would result in a shortage at the original price because there would be more demanded than what is supplied. And as a result, there will be a recognition as a shortage that suppliers can increase their price from P1 to P2. and this will result in a movement along the demand curve to the new equilibrium price, resulting in price going up, quantity traded going down. And really understanding the supply and demand curves, whether it's a shift to the left or the right, so an increase in supply and demand, allows you to really understand how this equilibrium price is. And the equilibrium price is always where the intersection occurs, because at that point, there is no surplus, no shortage, we have an efficient market. So what happens when it gets a bit confusing when there is a change in demand and supply at the same time? This is when you have to really understand the supply and demand curve and draw them out and understand it. So in this case, we are looking for the equilibrium of the original demand and supply, which is here. This is our original where our original supply and demand intersected. In this case, we have a shift to the right in both supply and demand. So supply and demand have both gone up. And as a result, the new supply equilibrium price has occurred here. And it just so happens in this case, price has gone down and quantity has gone up. But that's because more likely the increase in supply is bigger. You can see it's a bigger change than demand. More supply than more demand results in a price going down, quantity going up. And it's about really understanding those concepts. So a relatively complicated concept, but let's recap. Hopefully this video has helped you understand the changes in supply and demand and equilibrium price. Most importantly, equilibrium price is the equilibrium is the point where supply equals demand, and that is where the market will drive it to. Because at that stage, there will be no shortage or surplus at any other point. We will have a surplus where supply is more than demand, and a shortage where demand is greater than supply. So it is on the perfectly competitive markets forces to push the market back to equilibrium. This is what happens, and understanding what happens when factors change supply and demand really helps you understand these concept of equilibrium price. Now, I hope that has been clear. It's a complicated concept, one that understanding the charts and supply and demand curves is vital, but I hope that's built on your understanding of economics and in particular supply and demand and equilibrium price.